You just got another one, I believe. Right. We have 11. So we're gonna hold it to 1 hour as always, and if we have anything, it runs over, we'll have to take up next time. Okay, if we're holding some help to close time. All right, we now call this meeting to order, and we have the roll call.
Mr. Spain. Mr. Franklin.
Here.
Mr. Carter.
Here.
Mrs. Tanner.
Here.
Mr. Bullock.
Here.
Ms. Smiley. Here. Superintendent Thornton.
Here.
Okay. So happy that all of you came today, and we're gonna move right along with the approval of the agenda. I think all of you have one, if not raise your hand and we'll supply you.
This one,
Go ahead, yes.
after looking over the agenda, can we move D to H? Because they're basically the same. That will also save you some time. And also, move I to F, because I want to be talking about all of the studies and things that we've done for the school capital plan.
Do you think we ought to move H up to D because we didn't have it an hour? Do you think I know that was one of the main things we talked about.
Well, mine actually is not that quick, doesn't take that long, and actually it needs to come before the other stuff, the needs of the priority.
So we're gonna move D down to H.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. D goes to H. Immediate needs for middle and high school will come with presentation of individual school needs.
And actually, E, the discussion of long-range goals for consolidated high school, that and the capital plan and my presentation all kind of go together. I think once you see the presentation, and the reason that I'm doing this is because we've been given so many studies and plans that I don't know that you all have seen that information. And so that kind of brings you up to see what's been done. And then we can talk about the long-range goals from there and then immediate needs.
Okay, this is the approval of the committee to have these moved around. What to say at the
I motion that we approve the agenda as suggested, from D to H and I to F.
we had to move in proper second that we'll change the order of our agenda, and that order would be D to H and I to F. Am I correct? Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we'll move right along then. And we'll take D, right?
That's a minute.
I'm sorry, minutes, okay. I'm sorry, the minutes.
I recommend since it was September, since we had a meeting that we on the secretary or something read the minutes.
Yes, you want me? Because I took them.
Okay.
Education Committee met on September 24th at 4:30 in the school board meeting room. Board of Supervisors present were Ms. Claudia Lundy, Chairman, Mr. David Franklin, Mr. Clancy Spain, and myself. School board members present were Mrs. Sandra Tanner, Mr. Glenn Edwards, Mr. Thomas Bullocks, and Superintendent Thornton. Meeting was called to order. Mrs. Tanner questioned what the school board should do regarding construction of the proposed new consolidated high school, since the Board of Supervisors voted down funding for the engineering on this project. Mr. Spain stated the project is on hold for the time being. Discussion ensued regarding the current funding for the high school project, the time required to accumulate the needed funds for the 30% down payment. At the end of this budget year, there will be approximately $3 million available for the new school or any other capital projects as approved by the Board of Supervisors. The committee next discussed the conditions of the existing facilities. The roofs on the high schools, middle school, and part of Clarksville Elementary will need to be replaced in the near future. A partial list of renovations for each school was presented. The group agreed that the renovations would need to be started at this time if it is at least 5 years before the new school could be constructed, which would then push back the construction of the new school. Superintendent Thornton stated that there are QSAP funds available for school renovations totaling $2.7 million which are at 0% for 10 years. The county is eligible for these funds. The repayment schedule would need to be added to future budgets. The committee wants a list of proposed upgrades to each school and a priority ranking. The school board members stated that they also want additional funding in the regular budget for an additional 10 teachers, even though their ADM is only up by 20 students, a CTE program expansion, and technology upgrades. The meeting was scheduled, next meeting was scheduled for January 9th, 2015.
Can you hear the reading of the minutes? Are there any additions or deletions? Motion for approval.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion? They have to move and properly second that we'll accept the minutes as recorded by Wayne Carter. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, one abstain. Motion is carried, take majority.
Anybody concerning the meeting, usually the group will have a designated secretary. In our last meeting, I think Wayne just volunteered to take minutes. So I think we need a designated person to take detailed minutes, so we have it at the next meeting rather than someone volunteer we may or may not have the information that we need in that minute. So then we need to get a volunteer or pick a person so that person knows he or she needs to take the minutes.
And one for the entire committee,
Yeah, that's for the committee.
someone from the committee? Or
Someone that we want.
floor is open?
I did last time, I don't know. didn't
Well, Sharon also took minutes for us at the last meeting. And I took minutes too, but, so, Sharon, could we have Sharon take the minutes?
They're long enough one side, but she take it and Wayne take it. At the last meeting, so then we got 1 minute up of her.
Well, that's what I said, if
So
we have
we-
one person that's taking the minutes, if
Yeah,
Sharon's
a
taking.
designated person.
I always take minutes at every meeting, so it doesn't matter. Whichever way y'all do
So,
it.
if Ms. Sharon wanna take it for both times, come here and go there, with go,
Sharon, will you take the minutes? for the-
both times, all the time. Okay. Do we need a motion for the?
My motion that we will appoint Sharon Cover to be the secretary for the group for each time we meet. She will take minutes and then back up so we can read and document it.
Second.
It's moved and properly second that
Shuttleworth.
Shuttleworth will be the secretary for the education committee. All in favor? All opposed? So Mrs. Shuttleworth.
So y'all took minutes too, are they pretty comparable with ours? Or we read, okay.
So is there anything old business that we need to look at first on the minutes before we go to number one, with the deed?
Right.
I think all of them will come out really, when they go through the agenda. So you want to start first?
Okay. Can you? Yeah. The first thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is the fact that there are several plans in here, or studies in here. We have the facility survey, the Mecklenburg Task Force. There was also the Evergreen study, which was the efficiency review, and all of the studies pretty much said the same thing, that we needed to have a consolidated high school, middle school complex. And in August, the presentation that I'm getting ready to show you was a presentation that was given to our full board. But the minutes from the September 20th meeting, I wanted to call your attention to that, because these were the minutes, this was the vote that was taken after this presentation. And if you take note, it says that Mr. Bullock made a motion to approve the consolidation of high school and middle schools as part of the capital improvement plan. It's on the second page. have highlighted for you. Mr. Edwards made a motion to amend the motion to stay on the same site. So then Mr. Bullock made a motion to approve the consolidation of high school and middle schools on the same site as part of the capital improvement plan. And the vote was a 7-2 vote, so it passed to do that. The reason I brought this to your attention is we keep saying a consolidated high school, and the vote was for consolidated middle and high school. So as we're moving forward, we need to decide, is it going to be just the consolidated high school or the consolidated high school and middle school complex? Because it's going to cost the county taxpayers a lot of money to renovate. And when I say renovate, I'm not talking about facelift of making it look pretty. It's going to be tearing it apart, new pipes, new everything. For these high school complexes, when for just a little bit more, we could put them all together and have brand new for everybody. So I wanted you to notice that that was there. I also want to show that I did oppose this when we had this meeting. The reason that I opposed it was because I did not feel like we had a plan in place to be able to say this. And that's what's going to lead today, is that we need to have some type of a plan put together. We've had studies done. We've studied this to death. It's been studied since 1990. Since I've been on the board for 7 years, we talked about some of the needs that Dr. Thornton will address later, as things that we needed to do for the school system. And we said, well, we're not going to do that because we're going to have a new school. Well, 7 years later, those things are urgent needs now because we didn't put the bleachers in and things like that. So we need to make some decisions, but you all need to be aware of the studies that have been done, and I don't know if you've seen these before. And so I wanted to bring these to you so you can read them and see, so it will help you all to decide. And we brought in a package for the other members of the board as well.
Can I intervene?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I thought in our last meeting also, we had Dr. Thornton to prioritize the needs for the middle and the high schools. One of my members, I think it was Brinkman or Spain, one of the others, said we are not ready to build a high school yet. So therefore, we need to look at the middle and high school and update them because they have to be livable for these students to study.
And we've got those immediate needs.
So let me finish. So what I'm saying now, we don't need to go to the high school right now. We need to be concentrating on those middle schools and also the high schools now. Get them up to par, up to date.
Okay. Can I address that?
Okay, go right
Okay.
ahead.
You'll see as we go forward,
Okay.
you'll see as we go forward what those needs are, and we do have that prioritized list. However, I wanted you to see, so that you can weigh out, is it gonna be feasible to spend all of this money on the needs for these other schools, or do we go ahead and start working towards a plan, putting together a plan so that we can move in that direction? Irregardless, we have to have a plan whether we do a PPEA or we do traditional. We've got to have a plan, and it's going to address these issues in here. But I just want you to see. Okay, so as we go through here, like I said, this presentation was given to us in August 2010, and here it is 2014. The month after that, as you will note, we voted for consolidated high and middle school complex in 2010. It's now 2014 and we're no closer. We need to have a plan for us to be able to do that. Even if we're addressing these urgent needs, we still need to have a plan to be able to address the other issues. Excuse me.
This has been the plan ever since 2010, because I think I've even come to y'all's meetings and listened to y'all say that we're gonna do the two high schools.
One high school.
Wait, let me finish. With the high schools, we were gonna move the middle schools, we're gonna fix up the high school, Parkview and Bluestone. And I think I heard that at y'all's meeting, that's been since 2010. And fix those up, and we were gonna build what the plan was, y'all were looking at maybe building a new high school, consolidated high school. Now, I don't hear that no more. I'm hearing 2 middle schools and 2 high schools being consolidated now to one. We were talking about it, I think I heard it y'all being 2 schools. to one. Now we're talking about 4 schools, is that correct?
And what I'm saying is, you've heard that, I don't know when we went back to that, because.
But I've heard that since
because this-
2010, I mean, since I've been on the board.
But what I'm saying is, that's what our vote was. And when you see this PowerPoint, you'll understand why we voted the way that we did, when you start looking at the figures.
And Ms. Franklin, I think that's my fault, because when the dollar amounts that you see today, they talked about it, and I know when we all talked about it, we talked about building in 2 phases, the complex, and build it so that you build the first section of the high school so that you could add on to it.
Right.
And so that's where I've said, when you build a high school, yeah, we gotta move
Because we
middle
were
school.
talking about
high school.
60, you know, 60 million at one time, and then the last meeting I went to, we were talking about maybe 104, 5, or 6 million possible.
Right.
I just want you all to have all the information that's out there. That's what I'm bringing to you as the chairman of this committee. All the studies that we've had done previously to this, I wanted you to have that information, and I wanted you to see this PowerPoint, because we can only bring the information to you all. You have to give us a direction on funding. We don't have funding power. So I'm trying to bring you the information, everything that I know of, so that you got it before you help you make your decision.
Yeah, and that is important, because when we met with your board back in Glen Barber, kept saying, please give us something in writing, so we as a board will know just what you want. So we won't have to understand that 4 schools, 2 schools, 1 school, what was it that you wanted, so we could address that.
Well, and that's why I went back and researched, and I found what the actual vote was for. So that's what I'm bringing to you today. We all need to decide which way we're going to move forward as a committee, but I wanted you to have all the information to lead you to it. So the purpose was to address the VVOE report that had been done prior to this, and you'll see that in here. And when they did this with guesstimations, because until you actually have a plan, you really don't know what the costs are going to be for, like you said, the consolidated high school, renovate the middle school, build one consolidated high school, middle school, or to even build the, people have talked about building high schools on each end of the county. This kind of helps to bring it all in perspective cost-wise, and that's why I wanted to present it to you. It also helps the boards or the committee to narrow the options down, and which is going to be a prerequisite, again, like I said, to either the PPEA or to the traditional building of a high school. And the report, the Department of Education report, had already been done prior to this. And so what was looked at was consolidated versus 2 separate high schools, or renovations, and renovations to just what we've talked about, the 2 middle schools and the existing high schools. So that's the report that they looked at. And then they looked at the criteria of things that we would need to look at. And one is modern functional school facilities for the 21st century. Part of that is because we need to upgrade our classrooms for the type of learning that's going on now. We need to upgrade the classrooms and the classroom spaces so that if we need to add programs or use other spaces for different types of programs, and we don't have that flexibility right now. I know at Parkview Middle, sometimes they're using the halls as spaces. So we need to start looking at how do we change classroom spaces and how do we work for new programs. It was also brought out that we needed to make sure that the community was involved in this, so that there was public input sessions, so that the community had opportunities to say what we should use the building for. I was in a community earlier this week where they have a consolidated high school, middle school complex, and they also have the sports complex, the football and all of that, and it's all shared, but also it's open to the community to be able to use. So we need to be able to do that, and these are some of the things that this plan would address. Let's see, what's the best value for the long-term investment? The renovation, of course, versus that, and then the other criteria that this would help is to figure out the staffing efficiency. Transportation impacts, this plan will not address. However, that's a huge thing that we need to look at, because if we were to build, right now, the high school, middle school share buses. And so if we're to build a high school complex somewhere and then have the two middle school complexes, that's gonna be an impact on transportation. And so we need to look at what's efficient and where there's a cost savings there too. Long-term energy savings, benefits of natural light, and availability of land. Although there has been property that has been identified in the past, we need this study to help us, or not study, this plan to help us look at that land and see if it's suitable. Because we could buy property and then it not be suitable for the complex that we need. And so we need to make sure that all of that is available. And that's one of the things that this plan would help us to address. And remember, I told you about all of the unknowns that I had reservations about, and it was the reason that I voted against this at that time in September. And these are a lot of those unknowns, because I had those questions from my constituents, and how can I tell them if I don't know the answers? Some of the other ones is that, we haven't really looked at our programs to see what programs we need to keep. What do we need to add for that 21st century learning so that we can bring those industries in here, like Microsoft? What are the classes that we need to have? What are the spaces we need to have? So we need things like that. We also need to be able to have some type of design concept, an architectural concept, because people said, what would it look like? Well, we don't know that. And it's hard to tell people, you need to help us get to school if we don't have any of these answers. So then they looked at the enrollment targets, and they set this up so that there was future growth. And also potential for future growth through economic development, because hopefully the new schools come in, the new programs, we're educating that workforce, and those industries would want to move here, and then they're going to have families, and we would have the growth for them to be able to come to our school system. Right now, I can tell you at our schools, we're busting at the seams. My children will tell me that in their classrooms, especially in the middle school, that if their desk was near the register, the heating register, they'd sit like this the whole time because the desks were so crowded to keep from getting burned in the winter. These are issues that we need to take care of. I don't think anybody in here thinks that we don't need new facilities. It's just how do we get there and what do we do? And that's what we need to plan for, to help us with that. This was looking at, let's see, do I go backwards?
You're right.
Okay, all right. Okay, these
You're
are,
moving forward.
okay, I'm good. These are the parameters, the cost comparison parameters that they use. They looked at the low range to the high range during the 2010. They were using those market values. They were looking at the volatile market, and they were saying that if we went ahead and did something, that we could probably get reductions from 20% to 35%. Of course, we didn't do that, so we may be looking at lower reductions, if any, now with the market the way it is. Let's see. It allows us. Basically, it was they were giving us cost comparisons about the different options that we had talked about, and that's where we are now. Again, I want to reiterate that when we talk about renovation versus construction, renovation is not just a facelift. It's not just making it look pretty on the outside. It's not painting. We're going to have to dig up the pipes. These are 60-year-old buildings. Dr. Thorne's going to tell you the immediate needs and some of the issues that we're having right now. We've had to cancel school because of no heat and things like that. So he'll do that in just a second. But if you look at this slide, slide A is what the Department of Education recommended. It was the combined high school at the low end, the 62 million versus 78 million, and then the two renovations, the 43 and 55 million. And then column C is the new combined high school, middle school complex. So if you look at the cost of these two, and what they did was they gave us a breakdown of what it would be for the new combined high school, two new middle schools, or new combined high school. I didn't do anything.
They have.
Here we go.
Okay. So for just about the same money. Note that the board voted on September 10th, after seeing this and looking at these cost estimates, that they felt like the best option was column C, the combined high school, middle school complex. If we do this, if we go forward with this, and this is the plan that we all agree we need to move forward with, it would be all brand new. It would take care of those, some of those transportation issues and some of the other issues that are there. If you move on to the last two slides, you can kind of look at those simultaneously. BDOE said anything that costs 50% of the renovation or above should be new construction, that you shouldn't spend money on renovations, you should spend money on new construction. Conventional methods, from what they told us, was that anything above 75% of that cost should be new construction and that you shouldn't renovate. And if you look at this, it's broken down to part view and Bluestone. Part views was, the low was 82.4%, the high was 82.7%, and so that is above that 75% threshold, so we need for new construction. And Bluestone was 81.6%, was the low 81.8% was the high. Again, therefore, we should go for the new construction. That was the basis for the vote on September the 10th for the facilities and the capital improvement plan. And that's kind of what we're looking at for the long range. We do have some short-term things that we need to take care of, and Dr. Thorne will address those. But do you have any questions? I know you haven't had a chance to look over these, and that's why I really wanted to make sure that you had the same information that we had.
Was this, I mean, has this board ever had this information? I mean, if y'all.
I don't know that you have, and that's why I wanted to make sure. When we started talking in our last meeting, after the meeting, I started thinking about it, and some of the questions, I didn't know if you'd ever seen these, and so that's why I wanted to make sure that you had copies of all of it, and that we brought it to you.
You know, I think we definitely need long-term goals, and I think we need to have a meeting like this, maybe even a bigger table, and we need to sit in and look at these things. I don't think it's something we sit here in a 30-minute meeting almost and say yay or nay or anything like that, and I don't expect y'all expecting that today or anything like that. But I think, like I say, when we left the last meeting, we won't, at least I didn't think I was talking about going in there and tearing up the whole new schools, tearing up the outside, inside, gutting it, and all that. We heard you saying about the heat. Now, how many days have you missed for heat? How many days you closed up this year?
We closed twice at Bluestone High School.
Twice, okay. But that could happen at a new school almost, things like that. We want, I thought, and like I said, this group can help, is, you know, we want to fix, what do we need to do to fix these things and all that? And let's get this stuff fixed where, you know, what Bullock said last week in the school board meeting, you know, I think the quote was that somebody called you about the heat system, you said, don't call you no more, call me. What do you want me to tell them?
That's what people told me.
Yeah.
And I said, I repeat what they said.
You said, I thought you said that you told them,
person
don't call
called
the
me.
board of supervisors.
A lady called me and she said that he was messing up the school, had closed school. I said, yeah. And I said, now, you can call me, and I called him, but you can also call the school, the board of supervisor members.
Well, what would we tell them? I mean, what would I answer?
She was saying that you were the funding source.
Right, well, I've been on this board, what I'm saying is I've been on this board for 2.5 years. I think we have, since I have voted for everything that y'all have come and asked for, all but this study. Is that correct?
And you remember I said I gave y'all praise for that.
Yeah, what I'm just saying,
Right.
But you're saying the reason the heat ain't working is because we're not getting proper funding. When did you ask for it?
Ever since I've been on the board, we've been asking for funding to build.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying, I think we have voted for everything you've asked for.
Ever since you've been on the board, and I praised y'all for that. I said y'all fixed our elementary school and done an excellent job, and I give you praises for it.
So I'm having a hard problem taking blame for that. You know what I'm saying? You know, we're trying to reach out here to see what we need to do. And that's the reason I come to the board meeting. I've been coming to the board meeting. I'm not coming up there because I ain't got nothing else to do. I am concerned.
So I'm glad you are.
But I'm just saying, when all that stuff keeps coming back to us on this funding stuff, and we've given you everything you asked for up until now,
And
I don't understand.
I get a lot of calls too, Mr. Franklin, and people call me all the time, want to know what we're gonna do with the schools. They're saying that the kids talking about the owner of the school and stuff like that. They call me all the time about that, and I don't tell them to call you. But when the lady called me about the head, I said, well, maybe you want to call the board of supervisors. But I don't have the money to put it, we don't have the money in the school system to build the school.
I think this committee.
He is
should
saying
help
that
this.
we didn't know you had a problem
Right.
until we saw it in
Yeah,
the paper.
I mean, you know,
We had poor communication,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I think is
yeah,
why we had this
yeah,
committee,
Yeah,
so that we can talk about long range, short range.
Yeah.
Short range.
and we may agree and we may disagree, and with this thing, we can't all agree.
Well, the reason I brought this to you was so you could see everything that's been done up to this point, because I don't think you all have had that information.
Sure,
And
that's
so I
correct.
wanted to make sure that you had the accurate information up front of what we had seen. There are a couple of other studies that I didn't bring with me. One of them, I need to go back and find, and then the Evergreen Efficiency Review, but that's online. I just wanted to make sure you saw that. We have your list of prioritized
Right.
needs. They're coming up next, and he's gonna talk about those.
And I think it's
But
a
I
great
just-
start. I
Right,
think it's a great
I
start.
wanted you- right.
And, you know, I come to the meeting too, and I listened to, I think, Mr. Perry from Wise. Very,
Yeah.
was that him? I was very impressed with him. You know, one of the things he did too, that maybe we need to add with this is, I think when he got up there and showed the savings, and you correct me if I'm wrong, he said that, I think the debt on that new school was like 3.5 million a year. And he had a thing that he had showed that he had saved $3.7 million
Right.
with the savings. That would be a great thing to have with
And our
this
plan
too.
would help us,
Yeah.
because we can't answer those questions, that's why we need, and, you know, I don't know anybody in the county, I mean, we can't sit here and figure that out, is what I'm saying. This committee can't, that's why we need to look at hiring a firm to come in here and help us work through all of these issues. I don't know the answers to this, Mr. Brinkley, that's why I brought that information to you, so that you can see what we've seen, and now you know, and maybe you'll have a better understanding of why we're saying, the vote was for that, the consolidated high and middle schools. Whether that's the route we take, who knows? We need to work on that together, but you need to have all the upfront information, and I don't think you had that in the past.
No, and like I say, I think, like I say, we need to get to the immediate needs, and if we got
Right.
that, I think, you know, we don't need to be
And-
talking
and
about
I-
$250,000
Right,
for
and
a
I don't
survey
think
if that heat needs fixing. We
Right.
need to fix that heat.
But I don't think that, this isn't a decision I wanted tonight. I just was bringing you the information so you can make an informed decision
Right.
as we move forward. That was my purpose.
You want me to go over?
yeah, thank you, Stanley,
You
okay?
got this in your packet, it says construction needs.
We'll take this information back to our full board.
Okay, and I got copies of it.
I've read it. Well, and the first page here is, it says 2014-15 priorities. The way we prioritize this was kind of based on this premise, so that in the future, we're gonna build new high school, middle school, or renovated high school, middle school. So what we looked at is first, finishing what we started at the elementary schools. We built beautiful additions, and if you've been in them, this was just talked about at our board meeting, that you walk out of that hallway, and it's like walking into a cave when you walk into the old section. And we still have heating problems in the old section. So some of the things that you're talking about. So to get the 3 elementary schools in shape, we listed walkways to the gym, windows, replacing all the windows. HVAC bar units, that's the units that we put on the new addition, so that each individual classroom has its own heating and air, just like the new addition. It's very efficient, it's very easy to fix maintenance-wise. One room goes down, that's all that goes down. And it's a trend that a lot of schools in North Carolina use those bar units. Kitchen drains, kitchen upgrades, so upgrading the kitchens. The ceiling tiles, that's removing all of them. Painting the hallways, painting the classrooms. Upgrading the security cameras, the master clocks. All the paving at those 3 schools, J City Elementary, La Crosse, and we actually added South Hill, but still needs that additional lot in the back. So those covered, those 3 elementary schools. And then what we put in was Parkview High School, additional student parking lot, that's right above from where the gym is. That was on here as a priority because we had a major traffic problem created by parents in that student parking lot. And it's a mess in there every afternoon. And that's a safety issue. So we need a lot to put the students up away so the parents have their own place to come and pick up the kids. South Hill, which is one of our newer buildings, has a chiller down. It runs on 2 chillers. The compressor is broken in the chiller. Right now that school's operating on 1 chiller. If that chiller goes down, the whole school's down, HVAC and heat. That's a problem. And you see that's a $55,000 item. So things can happen even at the newer schools. At Bluestone High School, we have 1 boiler down. It's operating on 1 boiler. So we need that, like Mr. Burnley said, we need a boiler, desperately. We got a boiler down at Parkview Middle School, and it's operating on 1 boiler. We need a boiler. We put the bleachers for Parkview Middle School and Bluestone Middle School because they're falling apart. I know we don't want to spend a lot of money in those buildings, because we do want to be out of those buildings, but, you know, maybe we put in new bleachers that can be moved to a new facility at one point. But that's, we're looking at a safety issue there with those bleachers. And then the alarm system. And I didn't know how much to put in 1 year, so I really looked at that number right there and stopped. But then what I also put on here, on that same page, it says current principal request. These were CIP things that came in this year from principals. A playground center at Chase City Elementary School, the paving for that. South Hill Elementary asked for tables and chairs. Clarksville asked for a multi-activity play center. La Crosse has asked for 77 science tables, and then tables for 1st and 2nd grade for how they want to instruct their kids. Bluestone Middle School asked for a baseball backstop at $5,000. Parkview High School asked for a band truck. They have a pickup truck that's falling apart. They close all their equipment to everything. And then athletics, each one of our athletics department asked for a tractor, a front load tractor, so that they can maintain their fields by themselves and do all the work they need to do. And those are $18,000 a piece. Each middle school and high school asked for that. So that came up to $174,000. And then maintenance asked for 2 work trucks and 2 lawnmowers. And transportation asked for 4 new cars for student transportation. And our new transportation director asked for 6 new small buses. And I know we have our 2 running leases, which keep us going for buses. This was his suggestion to try to take cars off the road and be more efficient. These are special needs students, and what he's saying is over long haul, we have 6 small buses picking these kids up where they're located, but that's cheaper than hiring a lot of car drivers and putting a lot of cars on the road.
But many of those kids can't ride together.
Yeah, so, you're right. Some specifically will say you have to be in a garage.
They
You're
have to be
right.
separately single.
Right. So it doesn't eliminate all of them.
Good. Can we go back to the beginning where the top left says walkway to gym? So I know it's probably hindsight, where the gymnasium, now you're asking for a walkway. Would it have been more feasible to have a walkway? I know we said you had $6 million going out to go ahead and do that. Would it have been cheaper for those walkways to been put then?
We asked Blair to price it in their plan, and they priced it. But at this point, you'd pay Blair 15% markup that they did it. So we took it. So we didn't ask for them to do it. It would have gone
I
up to
think
6.2.
I think what Mr. Spain was saying, that we had probably planned the additions, the gymnasiums after the additions, you wouldn't have needed the walkways because they would have probably fit together, so the schools would have been more linear instead of being separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus, doing it piecemeal.
Yeah.
But to me, that's why we need a 10-year plan to look at all of the schools and everything that we need to do, because, once we get whatever we do at the high school and the middle school, if you do just the high school, then you're gonna have to have a plan for the middle school, and then you're gonna have to have plans for upgrading the elementary school. So that's, I just think that we need to do that.
It's very important, like we mentioned about the gym, if you're planning out, when
Right.
it came to us, then, right, you wouldn't have to revisit
And
certain projects.
I agree 100%, Mr. Singh. I think that that, again, goes back to, you know, we need a plan.
Yeah.
And since we have this education committee, anything that you're going to do, renovate or whatever you're gonna do, I know you have the power to say what you wanna do with the school board, but you need to come to this table, not this table, come to the table with us, and we discuss it, talk about it, and some of these things may have come out, you know, that you have overlooked, you know.
I agree.
And the rest of the sheets in this package are broken down by the individual schools. And,
Well, Wayne, do we have capital money available if we decide to do these?
Well, you get 3.8 on the first 2 pages, and then on some of these, it's even additional more money than what's on the first pages, correct? Because it's a lot more than just for the initial needs. You're probably looking at, you know.
but most of what's on the first page is what's on the next, like 4 pages of Chase City, Clarksville, La Crosse, and South Hill.
Yeah, because we did ask for a call in there. So this list is your product from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what they're saying,
This
or
is a priority.
just,
This
these
is
are
a
the
priority.
random priorities.
Right, this is a priority.
The first page.
Is the priority. And then we have middle school listed in here, and middle school totals like 2.5 million for Bluestone Middle, about 2.5 for Parkview Middle,
2.8 for Bluestone,
Bluestone High. So you're looking at.
3 million for Parkview.
Right.
So you're looking at about $8 million all total. You did, not even counting the middle schools.
Right.
You'd be over 8 million, you'd probably be closer to 10.
And this is not even addressing all of the problems, right? This is just like a facelift versus,
Well, it does have HVAC and it does have some stuff for like middle and high school. But we prioritized it that way because we've committed, we're to be in those elementary schools for a long period of time. So our thought was, let's finish what we started and get it right. And then let's do what has to be done in the middle school and high school, the boilers, to keep them running. And then we got time to sit down and think about, all right, what things do we want to do with the middle and high schools in the future? And part of that is going to be determined by the 2 boards deciding what you're going to do for building new. I think like Mr. Brennan said, if you're only going to build a new consolidated high school, then you're going to have a whole different discussion about what you're going to do with those high schools that exist right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why we prioritize it that way, to give you time. Let's finish what we got started and then give you guys time to sit and have these meetings and iron this out.
Well, you know, if the long-term plan is to go ahead and spend $106 million, we can't look back and have a lot of problems with what we already got, because I don't think there'll be a whole lot of money to be anywhere around like that after if we go into $106 million.
Right.
It's gotta be done up front, I think. I mean, that's what I think, before we can step into that. You understand what I'm
I'm a
saying?
little confused. Go right.
I'm just saying that these things has got to be fixed. Some of this stuff, and some of
Right.
these elementary stuff. Because if we, in our long-term plan, if we decide to say, we're gonna spend $106 million to build a big consolidated middle school and high school, we can't spend that money, then turn around and, oh, by the way, we got about $10 million worth of stuff we need to do to these schools that we got left behind.
Exactly.
Because I don't think it's gonna be there.
So we can't go back and fix the middle schools later. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
the elementary schools, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Right.
and
I
that's
think we
why,
agree with that.
that's why I wanted you to see the report first and then see what it's gonna cost for those individual, middle, high, and whatever. So,
Oh, one more question. I'm, you know, and being at the meeting, I noticed, the other gentleman, Mr. Perry, come up and he did a more basic school, I think, and then we brought in, I think y'all brought in a guy that was doing the project-based learning school lab. And I know you say, well, we gotta do a study, something to figure out which way to go, but I can almost tell we kind of leaning that away, in a way, to a project-based learning school. And the only thing that worries me, can any of us here today, and I'm not sitting here saying I got anything against project based learning. I don't know, but I hope that's the proper way, I really do, I hope that's gonna work. But can anybody here tell me in 5 years or 10 years, that's the direction we'll still be doing that? Because what worries me, if we keep looking at that type school, and 10 years from now, we're going in another direction, what have we got? Because just looking at that building, that thing don't have a whole lot of versatility to
That's
it.
on where that guy with that guy.
Wait a minute, let me say, I don't know, let me just say this first. Let's throw project-based learning out, whatever, because the biggest thing is we need to have spaces right now. Before there was project-based learning in the middle school, my children were there was not room for them to teach in traditional, deeper learning, whatever you want to call it, there was not space in there. Because of us having to cut and have larger class sizes in there, the middle school classes, my children would come home and say, the desks are piled on top of each other and we can't get, if they had a new student, there's no place to put it. If they had to work on projects, there's no, and even in traditional, or whatever you want to call it, they still had to do projects that they did during the day. They had to go out in the hall, which is a fire hazard, safety, whatever. So there were issues with that. So irregardless of what method we're using to teach, we have to have the space. And so if we have those
I just say we
21st
need to be careful
Well,
on how we
and
pick a certain type
Right, and
of
I'm not
school
saying- I'm
to
saying
last
for-
us, because this one might have to last 60 years too.
Right, but I'm saying 21st century learning spaces.
Can I address that?
Okay, go ahead.
That, the construction guy, ultimately, if we ever do a project, wants to build a school for us. He brought that guy based on looking at our website and seeing we're doing project-based learning. He thought he would impress us. That's all that was about. The bottom line, we don't want to touch them all. I've gone through the PPA process where we scrutinize every little curve they wanted to put in, et cetera. But what we want is a space that meets SOQ requirements, that's big enough, because now the SOQ requirements are a lot bigger for classroom space. And then with that bigger space, we can do whatever we want. We can do project-based if we want, we can do a traditional classroom, but we'll have the space to do what we want. So I don't want to design it specifically to some of those joint areas and all that stuff that he was talking about. And that's one of their high-end schools in Virginia Beach. So we're not looking for that. We're looking at a large enough space to do what we want to do.
And one of the things is, it'll cost you more to heat and cool the new buildings than to combine the two. Because even though that these are not energy efficient, your space is so much larger that when you do that, even with energy efficiency, people go, you're gonna save so much on electricity, your heating bill will be much greater because your space is gonna be much larger, and you know that as well. I mean, that's, the reality is, what would pass then is gonna be much less in size than what's gonna happen now.
So probably your staffing efficiencies that we'll look at, ours would not be as drastic because they had really small schools that they compiled. But we will have staffing efficiencies and we can show that.
Well, the
But some of that
question,
will
both
be
of the
eaten
schools,
up
if
with
the
it.
schools are overcrowded, how are we gonna have staffing efficiencies if?
In your double principals and some of those.
But that's not gonna be that many because of the other issue.
But when I'm saying the school's overcrowded, I'm talking about we've got all of these children.
Understand.
Yeah, okay. The room space is not big enough as well.
But still, even
You're not
if
gonna
you-
see-
you're not gonna save any teachers because
He was showing
you already have a
that,
large class.
Because you're gonna eat up a lot of it in your support staff, your principals, assistant principals, that's where you eat up a lot of it.
Okay, I have a question about the project list. We talked about the heating problem you have at the school. And when I look at, this may not be a problem, I'm seeing windows, I see doors, I see floor, then I see HVAC system at Bluestone High School, Parkview High School, I'm seeing the same thing. So we just been talking about heating problems at the school. When you look at the sheet, I thought maybe heating should be towards should be a high priority.
It is, they just listed everything in the school, and then on the front page where we did this year's priority, we moved Bluestone High School boiler, Parkview Middle School boiler, and so we moved all the heating to. And by putting in the HVAC at the 3 elementaries, you fix all the heating at the 3 elementaries. So this would fix the heating at all three elementaries, the chiller at South Hill, the boiler at the high school, boiler at the middle school. It fixes the issues that we're currently pressed with. So we really want the elementary and then the boiler needs at those other areas.
Okay.
Is what we addressed. And then the safety issue with the bleachers at the middle school, we put that on there.
So boy, two middle schools, and one high school and one middle one.
One is Bluestone High School, Parkview Middle School. And
Are these
South
old
Hill-
boilers, I mean, are these real old boilers, I mean, they've been there since school, I mean,
Yeah, they're
because
more
some
boilers.
replaced back in the early 2000s?
I can look that up,
I mean, I thought they were. And
We did buy some boilers, I know, with the priority list in years past, we have bought, there was some of the boilers were in that priority list that the school board would come up with for the additional funds at the end of the year.
don't the state have to come and somebody inspect them more pretty regular? I mean, I know even compressors and stuff at work, we have to have documentation that they are done at least once a year. Is that something that,
either check boilers, yeah.
the state or something?
No, I don't think the state comes.
It's actually, I think you pay someone who comes in and
But
checks.
I know what I play, the state requires it.
Yeah, it's
We have to
requirement
show
of the state,
documentation of that to the state every year, and I didn't know if they checked hours here within the school or something.
I can look up to see how many.
Okay.
Okay, so, Dr. Thornton,
Yes,
any other questions for Dr. Thornton? I just have one question. I think that Ms. Taylor said that the school board is leaning towards, combining the middle and the high school.
That's what our vote was.
Yeah, your vote, yeah, okay. Is that gonna take care of all of the schools we have in the county? The west end and the east end, just one consolidated high school with a middle school complex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Not gonna be
consolidated.
overcrowded, not gonna be sitting on the board, sitting on the heating system, as she said.
Now, if you build it appropriately, they won't be overcrowded.
Okay, second thing, you thought of a central location for this, right?
Yeah.
Because people come way past La Crosse, way up in Clarksville. We don't want them sitting up here in Boynton someplace, sitting in Boynton, and the people in the east end of the county, too far to ride every day.
I think that that's one of the things that we need to figure out.
Yeah, I'm just saying, okay, yeah,
Just-
okay, when you think about it.
Because we're talking about, there have been some pieces of land that have been identified, but that's something that this plan would help us to identify where the central location would be, what type of land we would need, what we would need to look for in that plan.
And that's why I'm glad we're having this meeting. Some of the things, I was told when I first came here, that we wanted to consolidate high school, and it was gonna be moved. And so, yeah, we need to have these discussions. And make the decisions.
Because we need to get sidetracked. Back in the day, yes, you did advocate for that, so we started believing that. That's why we, board came together, so let's start raising money. It was changed to some other things, so that would not put on a back burner, but then money went to other issues.
About how many students you think would be occupied still, if we consolidate?
I think that was.
We put 1,600.
We still use the same,
We put 1,600.
1,600?
With,
Future growth.
right.
What's the growth?
This slot right here, 16, and then future growth.
And what that means with the architects is they design a building for 1,600 with a plan for you to add on to go to 2,000.
Similar to what we did at South Hill. When South Hill was built, it was decided to go ahead and build it for the future size at that time versus just build it for the existing needs at that time. We actually priced it both ways, if I'm not mistaken.
Any other questions for Dr. Thornton or either Ms. Cameron? I think we have covered all.
On the, Ms. Lundy,
Yes, sir.
on the priorities, that's something we need to have a vote on soon, because if we're gonna get it approved, then we have to do all that fees and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we're gonna take it back to our full board, okay?
It would have
We
to be
cannot
in our
make our
budget,
decision.
so we haven't started on that.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, coming to find out.
Okay,
State has.
I have them down here now. I tried them down, I said, we can't take action here.
I know that,
We'll
I'm
take
just
it back to
telling
our
you what
full
we
board,
need,
yeah.
and then you can take you ready for board.
One quick, like I said, I was very impressed with Mr. Prairie with the school at Wise, and I think you compared it a lot to being similar to our situation and all. You know, one of the things that was, they were up in the top 10 in all their scores and all. What do you, I think y'all visited up there, some of you may have. What do you, I mean, what do you see there? What are they doing different? Are they taking the same test we are, and you know, what I'm saying
We
is.
just had a group of teachers and administrators went there Thursday, and they're going to report back to us. That was what we
Right. And
Yeah,
that-
but their scores, I mean, can't be contributed to the school because it just moved into the
Right.
school. So, yeah, so we went there to actually see, yeah, what are you
You see that part of it too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we want to see, actually, they wanted to see instruction of what you do.
You know, I just
They
think
didn't
that,
see the building.
that's the thing too, I think the public and all would buy into more if they start to see these stores moving up, you know, we know a building, I mean, it helps some things maybe, but it's not gonna be what's gonna take us there. And as far as, the direction we need to go there.
Ms. Lundy, you mentioned travel earlier. My district goes down to Lake Gaston.
Yeah,
And that
same.
was one of my reservations when we made the vote back in
Yeah.
2010, is because of the distance
Yes.
from those corners of Lake Gaston to Boynton is quite a commute.
It is.
Just as far on the eastern end of
Yeah, and then, but also, you know, at some point, hopefully, the economy is going to be robust again. We all are crossing our fingers, but when that happens, I'm not gonna say if, because I'm truly confident that when that happens, that, I mean, this county is so poised with, you know, Interstate 85, 58, and, you know, the two lakes that overlap, and Microsoft and, you know, HPs, and they're gonna attract a lot of other companies, and I really think that, you know, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're gonna have some significant growth. So whatever we build, whether it's two separate or a combination, that's my second concern, is to make sure it's big enough and that we're not having to come back to the table and say, oh, we need more money because of overcrowding.
And I think this presentation kind of addresses the two separate too, because it talks about the cost of what it would be times two in the county, which would be much more than this.
I think we have some of the same concerns as Ms. Mom. Okay.
Okay, my closing comment here, we all know no new school complex can be built in the next 3 or 4 years. We know that. We all know we must maintain what we have until we get something new. So we gotta fix it, gotta keep it going. A parable. I'll give my girl a new car 2 years from now. She said, Dad, I got a bad battery. I'm not gonna say let it set, go to walking. I'm gonna give you a new battery. Use them tires, use new tires. Keep the car running until we get a new one. So we can't point fingers, we got to keep the school going and take it. That's my closing comment.
You know that? Okay, I thank you all for coming, and I think we had a very good discussion here today. And we have a lot to take back to our board, and hopefully we get some of these priorities right away, and I can go on to let in allow us. Okay, our next meeting will be in May, I believe.
And I'll get you,
We have to figure out a date, okay? We'll figure out some dates and we'll email them to you, okay? And it will be at the school board office.
It'll be parking the,
I'll probably know,
we're gonna
okay?
have that.
So I declare this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you so much.